You're not a good guy. You're going along with it. People are like, you're so exceptional standing up against this. What? It's called self-preservation. You read a history book? The stuff coming down here is cancer. I keep saying it, folks. There's no getting out of it going along with it. You understand? It's the worst of the worst are in control. The sky's the limit. They like screwed up stuff. They don't want a normal world like we do. They're not like us. You figured that out yet? Like the guy they catch with dead bodies in his basement? They're not like us. Well, why'd he do that? Because they're not like us. Why'd Hitler do that? Because he isn't like us. Stop being idiots. Stop being dumbasses. Stop being naive, okay? All right, I got to hurry here. Look at this, the Daily Beast, which is even a Newsweek propaganda outfit. Local cops ready for war with Homeland Security-funded military weapons. A decade of billions in spending in the name of Homeland Security has armed local police departments. Well, yeah, they've been federalized with military-style equipment and a new commando mentality, but has it gone too far? They always like, oh, has it gone too far? Oh, yeah, you're going to find out when they take everything you got out of your bank account. They're going to take what the cops got. They don't care. Kissinger calls military men dumb animals. All I can tell the cops is don't drink the water and don't take those vaccines. You know what's good for you. Okay, continuing here. Alarm as Dutch lab creates highly contagious killer flu. I remember 6 years ago, an Australian lab created a human pox that can be developed in weeks by even low-tech laboratories that will kill 99% of any mammal it's designed for. And I love how this one is like, oh, you got government-funded groups. They've developed a bird flu that's super deadly and will kill millions of people. But they don't want the ingredients, how to make it released to the public, which is pure bull. That way when all this stuff gets released and the globalists go in their bunkers, which is their plan in their own words. If you're a cop watching or FBI, instead of just saying this guy's crazy, go look up Club of Rome. Go look up Dr. Pianka at UT. Go look up Peter Singer. Go look up what they say, the UN. Once the world government's in place, folks, and they shut the economy off to get us all dependent on government and put in martial law, then they start releasing plagues that get successively worse, and they get more control out of each one, just like a banker bailout, until they kill 80 to 90% of us. I mean, I know that's crazy because you see, truth is stranger than fiction. I'm not the one that says they're going to do all this. Let me tell you, I wish they didn't follow through on their promises. That's what's so horrifying. Every day I come in, everything I've said's confirmed. It's not like, oh, great, I'm proven right. Oh, God, our listenership's exploding. I'm like, holy mackerel, our listenership's exploding. That makes me a bigger target. Holy mackerel, it's all coming true. I wish I was wrong. This isn't a game. It's not entertainment. It's not fun. It's the real world, folks. But we're a testament to what really happened. Now, hopefully we turn this around. It's not too late. Here's another one. USS Scientific Journal to censor bird flu studies. That's out of The Guardian. We got those reports. And then we've got this little report here, and then a big final finale that one of our great researchers has put together, the Al-Qaeda timeline, to illustrate that all this terror is fake. Missile parts accuse victim of U.S. entrapment extradition appeal. This is out of the London Guardian, biggest paper in England and Europe. And they admit here that the federal government contacted him and set him up to ship batteries to somebody so they can then connect it to missiles and claim that there's basically white Al-Qaeda. Let me show you this article. He admits arranging the shipment of batteries from the U.S. and the Netherlands in 2006, a deal he said made him a profit of $500, but insists he had no idea as to their final destination and was the victim of a sting. And you ship some batteries, they just call them missiles. I mean, that's how these people operate. Now let me get to this final piece of news before we come back with our guest with more on tonight's top story. Al-Qaeda. Now, I asked the crew to put together a timeline, and quite frankly, Marco's put together, our great graphics guy, put one together bigger than I would have even done, but still small if you go through all the evidence. I mean, it would take hours to go through the connections with Al-Qaeda and the CIA and Israeli and British and Pakistani intelligence, as well as Saudi Arabian, which are all, quote, allies in the fight against terror. It's not saying there aren't real Muslim terrorists or groups or Hezbollah out of Iran that launches some attacks. That's Shiite, separate from the Saudi Arabian Al-Qaeda group. But our media knows the public doesn't pay attention, so they say Saudi Arabia, is an Al-Qaeda. but Iran is, when they're Shiite, the arch enemies of the group. But if you look at the history of al-Qaeda, who set it up, Zbigniew Brzezinski's written 2 books about it, the National Security Advisor in '79. And if you look at this whole process of the underwear bomber being put on the plane by the government on record, and al-Qaeda being used against the Serbs, the Russians, being brought into Libya, it's amazing. So we'll start going to this timeline here while I narrate it. Early on, Hitler helped set up the first Muslim brigades, and then the West, when they took over the Middle East after World War II, they just took control of those. But it was reported by London Guardian, Jones Report, many other publications in the last decade that Osama bin Laden met with National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski when he was admittedly the main liaison to the Mujahideen for the United States. Other governments had other liaisons. And General Hamid Gul, who headed up Pakistani intelligence, he talked about meeting bin Laden in some of those operations on my radio show. So that's the first part of the timeline right there, the fact that al-Qaeda is set up by the CIA, and al-Qaeda means the CIA base. There's another one, that's by the former top secretary in the British government, Robin Cook, who resigned and died shortly after, saying the lies about WMDs were evil. He said throughout the 1980s, Osama bin Laden was armed by the CIA and funded by the Saudis to wage jihad against the Russian occupiers of Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda literally means the database, was originally the computer file for thousands of mujahideen. He was killed by this. Robin Cook was off for bringing this out, who were recruited and trained with the help of the CIA to defeat the Russians. Inexplicably, and with disastrous consequences, it never appears to have occurred to Washington that once Russia was out of the way, bin Laden's organization would turn its attention to the West. Well, it was done so they could take our liberties here and launch the wars. When you're a global banking cartel and want to take America's rights, you have trillions to yourself in no-bid contracts and invade all these countries, you stage an attack. Kids understand Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Palpatine attacks himself to take control. Hitler blows up his own Reichstag. Our own government attacks its own ships to blame it on North Vietnam. So we've got that report. Here's another one. Alleged trainer of 9/11 hijackers, a CIA informant. So was the 7/7 boss. Turned out to be MI6, British intelligence. There's just countless examples of this. And then shifting gears more into the future, remember Kurt Haskell came on our show first and said he saw the government get the underwear bomber on the plane 2 Christmases ago, almost 2 years ago. And then later on C-SPAN, the government's, the Undersecretary of State had to admit, yeah, they were ordered to get him on the plane to by the CIA, basically. The State Department did indeed put Muttalib on the plane at the behest of an unnamed U.S. agency. Later, we turned out to be CIA. And then, of course, the CIA tells Congress al-Qaeda to attack in 3 to 6 months. CIA boss Leon Panetta told Congress today that homegrown extremists working with al-Qaeda, we'll cover that next, will strike America within 3 to 6 months. That didn't happen. The recruits will be clean and have no trace to phantom terrorist organizations, according to Panetta and other intelligence groups. That means cut out black ops who will then blame a patsy that looks similar to them. That's how the standard paradigm works. And then, of course, we were told the biggest story of 2011, voted by Newsweek and others, is the killing of Osama bin Laden, even though they released fake photos and claimed they buried him at sea, even though they claimed they had videos while Obama watched him being killed. Turned out that was fake. All of it was completely fake. And has been proven to be a manifest fraud. And I've had high-level CIA people contact me off record and say, yes, it's completely fake. Continuing, Iran has now been accused of al-Qaeda's secret deal by U.S. officials, and they've had a federal judge claim that 9/11 was carried out by Iran. Well, wait, I thought it was Iraq that turned out it was a fraud. Or never look at Saudi Arabia with 15 of the 20 hijackers or 15 of the 19. No, it's Iran, and we've got to attack them. And they just got caught with that whole fake report of the used car salesman trying to attack the Saudi embassy in D.C. Just more manufactured garbage. But something they hope you don't remember is that Anwar al-Awlaki, it was in Fox News last year, and Infowars also reported on it, radical U.S.-born cleric Anwar al-Awlaki killed. They claimed that they killed him, and I predicted that would happen just a few months after it came out, show the next slide, please, that Fox News, no, it's the middle one right there. Yeah, it's fine. Leave all this in. It's fine. Exclusive. Al-Qaeda leader died at the Pentagon just months after 9/11 with the Secretary of the Army. While he was on the news as number 3 in Al-Qaeda most wanted, there he is. And it turns out he runs the underwear bomber, the Times Square, Major Hassan, these useful idiots. He actually works for the globalist and is setting all of this up. Good job, guys, showing that information. And then, of course, we have this final article. Thanks to Obama, the Al-Qaeda flag is now flying high and proud over Libya. And the Daily Mail reported on that. We have links in this American Dream article. You can follow those links. And Al-Qaeda has been put in charge there, and now they're sending Al-Qaeda into Syria. Al-Qaeda is the secret globalist cutout black side, dark side army, black op army that they use. So let's back it up to the front because it looks a lot better, like Marcos originally made it, and play that whole timeline from front to back as I close things out here. So again, Al-Qaeda, the continued army of the New World Order, taking action. Here's another one. Free Syria Army, now led by NATO Libyan Al-Qaeda commander. That's also being reported. So this is where we stand. They have these manufactured armies. And when a good old boy says, we've got to have the army on the streets to fight Al-Qaeda, ask him why in all the manuals it's about conservatives, libertarians, gun owners, people that support freedom and the Constitution, Ron Paul supporters. Ask him why none of it has to do with Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is just the backdrop so the criminal banks that run our military and our government have a pretext to use that system against the American people. That's what's going on. That's what's happening, and that's what we face as a society. And I know we're heavy on news, heavy on information here. I'm not some idiot reading off a teleprompter or some info babe acting like I'm in love with you looking at the camera that you think is looking in your eyes. I'm a real person who studies this and understands it, and I want to turn it around because I want to be free, and I want my children to be free. We're going to go to break. We're going to come back with our guest who I was telling him, don't go public with your name. And he said, no, now's the time to do it. And he works for the Department of Defense as a federal employee in Space Command, you name it. So that is coming up after this break, dealing with the fact that in these FEMA documents, not only does the military run the camps, they're the blue guys, the good guys, the American people are the red. Al-Qaeda is listed as red, and the government listed as blue. Same thing in Afghanistan with the Taliban. We've always known this. I've been to the drills and seen it, but this is the public force structure from official government websites. This is the plan, hidden in plain view. This is extremely newsworthy. We'll be right back. It's Infowars Nightly News. Don't forget, we've got the 15-day free trial reinstituted. It was so popular. If you're watching this later on the web somewhere else, want to support real, hard-hitting news and information, and folks, we are risking our lives, our honor, our sacred honor, our families, our treasure, everything. We need your support now more than ever, and you can get a 15-day free trial at prisonplanet.tv right now or get 44% off on a year. We're going to come back with this breaking news straight ahead. Thank you for funding the truly alternative media.
What's up with these sorry politicians? Lots of bark. When it's showtime, whimpering like little shih tzus. You want big cuts. Ron Paul's been screaming it for years. Budget crisis? No problem. Got $1 trillion year one. That's trillion with a T. Department of Education? Gone. Interior, Energy, HUD, Commerce? Gone. Later, bureaucrats. That's how Ron Paul rolls. Want to drain the swamp? Ron Paul. Do it.
I'm Ron Paul, and I approve this message.
If you believe in this information and want to support its viral spread, go to the Infowars store at Infowars.com. We've got the new G.I. Joe Infowars t-shirts. We've got the incredible Pro Pure gravity-fed filters available at Infowars.com in the store. We've got a new DVD, Scientists Under Attack, the Don't Tread on Me flag. We've got all sorts of different bumper stickers to help spread the rebellion virally. It's all there. Wristbands, citizen rule books in every order. Order online at Infowars.com today. The water filters, the canteens. It's all there. Infowars.com. At the beginning of this broadcast tonight, I broke down the latest information concerning the activation of continuity of government in this country at a level we have not seen since the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. In this case, the entire architecture of the COG system is pointed at legitimate constitutional government, the states, the governors, the general public. You see drones being activated against rural communities in North Dakota for cows on their property. You see state reps and governors calling for military to be on the streets of Illinois and Louisiana. It's all happening right now because the world economy is preparing to implode. It's all part of an organized program that we warned you about 12, 13 years ago when they got rid of Glass-Steagall to sell derivatives of the planet, get the planet to tie into that fraudulent debt and then implode the legitimate governments of this world and fold them into a private corporate banking cartel system that the technocrats and the kleptocrats call the New World Order. Now, you'll know that 2 weeks ago, we were sent by state employees documents that were public, but no one had pointed them out, with Kellogg, Brown and Root, who'd been given the contracts, according to Wall Street Journal in 2006, the contracts to build giant FEMA camps for emergencies across America. Then we got new documents a few weeks ago that they were now getting on 72-hour notice local teams ready of subcontractors to man them on a 72-hour notice or 3-day notice. Then expanding from that point, we received more documents that the Department of Defense was involved and that FEMA was basically orchestrating the entire operation. Then today, a frequent caller who gets through on the radio, Angie, in the Carolinas, called, and I talked to her off air, and she said, no, my husband, works for the Department of Defense. That's why we keep pointing this stuff out to you. This is on the official federal government websites for contractors, and you need to understand it's got blue group designations. I went, wait, I've been to urban warfare operations. It's blue and red. In Afghanistan, it's blue and red. Now, they wear transponders. She's like, that's right. Here's the document. I'm emailing it to you. It's public. And we went and pulled it up, and sure enough, I recognized everything in there from the drills I've been to. First one was in 1999. And the Marines even let us in there in Oakland to their situation area in a big tent, and it had the red group fighting the blue group, who were the militias. And then I went in where they were doing interrogations of actors who were playing the part of U.S. citizens, and they would ask, where'd you get the weapons? And later the Marines freaked out that I was able to get this footage, and we were threatened. We were told, well, this was classified. You shouldn't have seen it. And it's in my film, Police State 2000. The Sunshine Project here in Texas got documents through FOIA where the Marines are training with drones and helicopters with pilots with opiate knockout gases in plans to knock out whole cities during insurrection. And you can pull this up. The Sunshine Project was threatened, and the government said, remove that or we'll come after you. It was accidentally declassified. I mean, this is the type of stuff I learned, and I'm like, we got to warn people. Now, that said, we went ahead and talked to Angie off air, and then talked to her husband, and I was telling him, sir, we probably don't want to use your name because you work as a civil servant, former Navy veteran, in the Department of Defense in some pretty highly classified areas, and he didn't get into any of that with us. And he said, no, I want to have my name public. This country is in so much trouble that this stuff's all public. It's just people don't know where to look, that I'm going to go ahead and use my full name, and I'm going to go ahead and speak out here because America's all on the line right now. I mean, this is really creepy stuff when they're openly passing the NDAA, saying they'll arrest U.S. citizens. It was on the news today. They're saying they'll kill U.S. citizens if they want. Obama says he'll kill U.S. citizens in America. In fact, that was on C-SPAN a few nights ago. We've got that video. It's overwhelming what's happening. And now all over the news, they're saying use the military on the streets to protect the American people. They're selling us on this. The TSA is now running checkpoints on highways. This is classical martial law, as Ron Paul said last Tuesday on my radio show. The NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, is martial law. So Joe Joseph works for the Department of Defense in some very highly classified areas and with space-enabled warfare, but we'll leave it at that because that's all he can say. And he basically wants to warn the public about what's open intelligence of what's happening. And he also told me off air, and he's going to repeat it, A lot of people in the military and Defense Department are awake. These are good people by and large. That's why 70+% of all donations to Republicans and to Obama in this race and the last are to Ron Paul, because they know Ron Paul's telling the truth. They know. They had a Bloomberg article 2 weeks ago, headline, "Pay this man money so he can fire you," was the joke headline, because he says he'll cut government. The people in government realize you've got to get rid of this cancer. They'd rather be homeless than let this tyranny go through. So joining us is Joe Joseph, Department of Defense civil servant, to break down the National Continuity Program, NCP program, mission support activities, which is unprecedented. We have our article that is at Infowars.com that just went up minutes ago, going through all of this, that I'll give you the title of. Right now, it's military to designate U.S. citizens as enemies during collapse. FEMA continuity of government plan, prep, total takeover of society, dispatching military domestically under economic collapse emergency. And that's what's so important. We are designated the exact same way combatants in Afghanistan or Iraq are, or Libya. Joe Joseph, again, thank you for joining us over the phone.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Alex.
Well, I've talked enough at the start of the show and in your intro. This is complex subject matter. Why are you going public? What can you tell the people that's open source?
Well, as a civil servant, everybody takes an oath, no matter what level of service that you provide to the country. And it's the same oath that the president takes all the way down to active duty military. And when you take that oath to support and defend the Constitution, you're supposed to take it seriously, I guess you could say. So with that said, it's my duty to provide the people who are my boss with information to make them aware, because, an informed public can really make a difference, but they have to do something. They can't sit on their hands and just sit there and let this stuff happen. And that's gone on for far too long. So hopefully by giving this information out, we can raise some awareness and get people angry. And that's really what needs to happen. I mean, people need to get angry. We need to see civil disobedience. You don't have to consent. Silence is consent in the eyes of the law. And that's the biggest thing that people need to understand. Don't be silent anymore. It's time to speak out. You brought up Ron Paul. Ron Paul is probably the last best hope we have right now to turn things around. He's it. And that's why, like you said, active duty military is the largest contributor to his campaign. Out of all the other candidates combined, he gets more than they do. So it's very important that we take the time now so that our children don't end up having, I can't even imagine the world that they're going to live in, considering what we deal with now.
Well, it's a world, Joe, where Corzine can take $1 billion+ and be caught in perjury, and he isn't even going to get in trouble.
Absolutely. We live, the rule of law doesn't apply anymore. Now it's the rule of men. And we need to reinstitute the rule of law. And the only way to do that, and people, we have the power. The people have the power in this country. The powers that be, this elitist cabal that runs things, and they do, the special interest, they pull the puppet strings of our non-representing representatives. They're the ones that put up this smokescreen to have you think you don't have the power. But it's your labor that funds all of these efforts, all of these illegal wars and everything else. And you have the power. Each and every person listening to this show tonight has the power to change things. And that's why I'm here, is because I feel compelled, I feel duty-bound to educate people and give them the knowledge, arm them with the knowledge to be able to fight back.
Well said, Joe. Now, we've got in front of us what your wife directed us to.
Yes.
There with your family in the background today, and you're home from work now and can cover it. Statement of work, Federal Emergency Management Agency, National Continuity Program. She sent us emails linking to public contracts last week, and she called up this week and said, look, you got the wrong documents. Yes, Department of Defense gave out the contracts to prepare activating the FEMA camps, but this is the one that gets into the total takeover of government. And it says COG, break-ins on media, surveillance, the Blue Force. Go through this document with us.
It's a fascinating document. And first of all, just so everybody understands, this is all public information. This is what's called a solicitation for contract. And basically, the government has a website, fedbizops.gov, where they put out draft statements of work, and contractors will go and bid for the work. It's a very convoluted, hard to search through system, which is why things are very easy to overlook. Case in point, if you wanted to look up contracts, you type in Department of Homeland Security, you're going to see thousands of contracts that come up, and you'd have to comb through each and every one of them to find it unless you know the key words and the key acronyms. Well,
it's got 35 agencies under it. It's probably hundreds of thousands of contracts.
Absolutely. I mean, and like I said, and that's what makes it so difficult. So I can totally understand how, it may have been missed or misinterpreted, and it's very easy to do. Just recently I saw a solicitation, Department of Education, wanting 500 militarized shotguns. Really? But this is all public information. So this
expanding on that, I've probably been to 20 urban warfare drills, researched this for 14 years, 13 years or so, because I wasn't on this the first few years on air. And when I read these documents, I understand some of it, but it's all meant to be Greek. It's all put in a military contractor parlance where the general public doesn't know what blue groups against red groups mean.
Exactly right. Well, let me go this. I'm on page 3 of the document, and there's only certain paragraphs that you really have to key in on to understand what it's all about. And it says other efforts of the Operations Division, and Operations Division is exactly that. They oversee the operations of continuity of government. They are the contractor support with government oversight. So other efforts of the Operations Division includes initiatives such as Operation Rendezvous, or OPRON, Task Force Rendezvous, the development and integration of the Federal Emergency Response Official Repository System, National Security Special Event Contingency Support, Disaster Relief, and Humanitarian Assistance Contingency Support. And then it says additional efforts of the Operations Division include Geospatial Information System, which is like a tactical, battlefield information. It gives a battlefield picture.
That's what I saw with the Marines, with big projectors on the wall where they had the satellites real time.
Yes.
Where they had the transponders as blue group. The militias they were practicing fighting in California were red group.
Right.
And they had Humvees with robot guns that anybody not in blue group was going to be killed. And this was 12 years ago.
Well, I mean, it's advanced. Same concept, but the technology has advanced somewhat. Blue Force situational awareness is what you're talking about, and in that sense, it's much like for years, for example, commercial aircraft have a transponder on it, and that system is called Interrogation Friend or Foe, IFF. That's what that stands for. And basically, Blue Force situational awareness is the exact same thing that you have with commercial aircraft, military aircraft, and everything else. They have a transponder where a signal goes out, the plane responds, and then on the operator's screen, you're going to either have like a circle, a square, or a triangle. And it's going to be either a circle for friendly, it's going to be a square for unknown, and a triangle for bad guy. And so that's what you have. Blue Force situational awareness is exactly that. So because of today's technology, I mean, a transponder can be, look at RFID.
Well, our cell phones have the little triangulators, so we know they've actually used those. And so they've got a full battlefield scope. They can tie into cameras on the street, surveillance systems, satellites, drones, any of it. And so they know friend or foe. And this is talking about in continuity of government with camps. having people with their transponder badges in the blue group against the red group, and the red group is the American people, I guess.
Right. Well, this is the scary thing about when you talk Blue Force situational awareness. The first thing that I think about when I think of that is overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya and wherever we're waging illegal wars. That's where I envision Blue Force situational awareness. What I don't envision is having Blue Force situational awareness on our own soil, because it's almost too crazy to wrap your arms around. It's just too much to understand.
It's what Ron Paul said. NDAA is a declaration of war against the American people.
It is. It truly is. And, you know, even if, and here's the thing that people need to understand. A lot of these representatives and senators, of course, they don't read the bills. They don't do that. Same thing in government. These draft statements of work, 9 times out of 10, are written by the contractor, submitted back to the government, and the guy there, you know, he's just like, well, yeah, okay, I'll just pass this on through. Okay, fine, put my signature on it, and out it goes. So oftentimes they don't even know what's in there. They just know that they get an overview. Okay, this is there, this is there, this is there. Make sure that you guys hit this point, and this point, and then they ship it on through. So if a company like Halliburton, who we know has ties to this elitist cabal, goes and writes a statement of work, there's no telling what's in there. And that's why it's important.
Oh, wow, I get it. They're actually influencing policy by the way the contracts are written, and the higher-ups don't even understand that.
Right, exactly right. That's the thing that people don't understand, is that part of the dumbing down of society, it hasn't only affected the masses, it's affected government as well. A lot of these government employees now don't even know how to write a statement of work. You know, and so. Well,
look, I've been studying this particular type of thing for 13, 14 years, and I barely have an elementary understanding. And I guess it's part of the complexity of the world allows corruption to hide in it.
Absolutely. And, you know, there's another on this is extremely interesting, is on page 5. They come out with Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center. Now, I've been doing this for probably 3 or 4 years now. And like I said before, off air, it's because of you that I woke up and listening to your show.
Yeah, Mount Weather is one of the alternate government heads, along with Colorado Springs and Cheyenne Mountain. I mean, they've made movies about martial law where Mount Weather runs it all.
Well, exactly right. But for years and years, they denied the existence of Mount Weather. And now, and when I say that, I mean, yes, we know Mount Weather's there. And they say, yes, it's a 564-acre Department of Homeland Security facility. But what people don't understand is, hey, look, it's a deep underground military base. It's one of those, just like Cheyenne Mountain and everything else. And in this document here, they acknowledge it.
By the way, Denver Airport's connected to Cheyenne Mountain. I've talked to the contractors, and they just go on and have the Daily Show make fun of us. It's very funny.
Yeah, well, there you go. See?
Here's a deep underground military base right here.
Here it is. .gov. This is a .gov website. It's coming right from the horse's mouth. So they talk about the support that this contractor will provide for Mount Weather. This goes hand in hand. This solicitation goes hand in hand not only with S-1867, but it also goes along with on December the 8th, the White House issued that strategic implementation plan.
Yeah, let me stop you there. NDAA is the National Defense Authorization Act you just mentioned, which they tried to say didn't affect citizens, and they admit, yeah, it does, by the way. I want you to be scared, as different senators said. You want a lawyer? Ha, you're not going to get one, Graham said. Lieberman said, we want to scare you. I mean, weird old men saying, I want to scare you. I want to scare citizens. It's beyond Twilight Zone. And then now you bring up what AP reported on 2 weeks ago, and we have the document up on screen here in a moment. It's this new threat assessment by the White House, and they say we're now worried about domestic groups, and executively they say in NDAA, now law, Obama hadn't signed it yet for some weird reason, but he says he is. It is quite a plunge they're taking, where it says if you're Al-Qaeda or affiliated groups. Well, this document of policy says the White House decides, and that means anybody saying something that may stir people up. That's what the legalese, and I've talked to top constitutional lawyers to make sure my lying eyes weren't lying. I mean, this is widening it to speech, to everything. It is an off-the-chart announcement. So you've got the floor on the next document. We'll bring it up on screen, Joe. Break it down.
Yeah, it's the strategic implementation plan for empowering local partners to prevent violent extremism in the United States. And I want to draw everybody's attention. This is page 3 of the document to the quote by President Obama. And I only want to read the first sentence and a half because this is what's so important. It says, as a government, we are working to prevent, and it says prevent. So they're not responding to, they're preventing, which is pre-crime, which is Minority Report.
Yeah, it's pre-restraint on speech, on actions. It's saying your speech is going to cause the problem. Pointing out we're stealing pension funds. Pointing out we've stolen $27 trillion in bailouts. Pointing out Corzine's a crook and has $35,000 plate dinners per person for me. That, as Cass Sunstein, his regulations are, says he wants to arrest people who don't believe in man-made global warming. I mean, these are public papers. So did we find page 3 on that? There it is. Please continue.
It says, as a government, we are working to prevent all types of extremism that leads to violence, regardless of who inspires it, period. At the same time, countering Al-Qaeda's violent ideology. So when they put that period in there, they separate Al-Qaeda from homegrown extremism. That's
By the
what
way,
you have.
Obama's lawyers, and so did Bush's, the Führer precept, have said he speaks like the Pope from the throne ex cathedra. When he says something, that's law. He will launch wars without Congress. He will decide who's terrorist. He will decide who to detain for life without anyone knowing, or he will decide who to kill. All these are announcements. So he's saying, if you are doing things that stir people up, you are Al-Qaeda.
Absolutely right. And so what this document does, and folks, I encourage you to read this document because knowledge is power. And the only way you can change things is if you take the knowledge and you apply it. So this document, it ties sheriffs and local law enforcement to the hip of the federal government. It takes away state sovereignty and puts the feds pretty much in charge.
Which is what the threat fusion centers were set up for.
Yes, this has all been decades in the making. And if there's one thing these elitists are, they're patient. But now they're not because they see their plan. See, the problem with all this is the internet was their worst enemy. It was something that they developed, and all of a sudden, now this information's coming out and people are starting to get hit.
And now they're admittedly saying that they want to censor the internet for our own safety.
SOPA Act, absolutely right. In the name of online piracy. And what's scary about the SOPA Act is the fact that anybody can go and put a copyright infringement. Say you do a video on YouTube, you don't even have to be the person that made the video.
And you're banned from the internet forever. And guess what? Now Microsoft comes out with, we're going to thumbprint and face scan you to get online. It's an internet ID. And these global corporations can selectively enforce. The 80 inventors of the internet have gone public saying this. Even Google says this. This is not your opinion. And again, don't you think, though, they're bum rushing, they're panicking is only waking folks up faster?
Well, this is, I want everybody to understand this. You're seeing this because they fear you. You're seeing this because they know that if the American people or the world in general get hip to their game in mass, that they're finished. There's nothing that they can do about this. Once the gig is up, their game is done. Their goose is cooked. So they're quaking in their boots, much like the Republican establishment right now is on an all-out assault on Ron Paul. And regardless of what they're doing, everything they do, whether they silence, they ignore him, or they attack him with that outlandish racial allegation from papers that were written 25 years ago that he had nothing to do with. They're throwing the kitchen sink at him, and nothing is sticking because people understand that. How many times can you get sold a bill of goods? How many times do you have to hear Obama say, well, when I'm elected president, I'm not going to put a single lobbyist in my camp? in my cabinet. Oh, really? I'm going to close down Guantanamo Bay. Really? I'm going to pull out our troops in 180 days. Oh, really? How many times can you get sold a bill of goods before finally you just throw your hands up? And no matter what, everybody, you could say, I don't agree with his foreign policy. I don't agree with anything else. But if there's one thing the man is, it's consistent and honest. And even if you don't agree with his policy, vote for him on that basis alone. Because how many politicians can you honestly say you've seen in the past 100 years that have been honest like him? I can't.
Well, that's what's happened is the establishment realized to control a big free market system and milk it, you don't have to invent anything. You've just got to buy all the politicians, and then you've got control of the economy. And they've leveraged American wealth to take over most of the world. And then they're so greedy, they have this post-industrial plan to implode things to take it over. And now everything's mounting against them. But from all I've studied, the Queen of England, David Rockefeller, Lord Rothschild, they're at the top of the pyramid.
Absolutely.
They're all from a different 2 or 3 generations ago. They are not connected, even though they've got top think tank advisors. And what's scary is David Rockefeller is fading, in his wheelchair, and they just think they're going to hammer down and pull through on this. And I've looked at every possible scenario. They're all hellish. But at the end of any of them, they aren't in charge. Right. They aren't in charge at the end of any of them. And they don't care. They're like, well, damn the torpedoes, go straight at them.
This is a battle of good versus evil. When you boil it down to it, the nitty-gritty, it's good versus evil. A guy that I do a radio show 3 nights a week, and one of my regular guests is one that comes on your show, Alfred Adisk. And we talk about this all the time, about how this really boils down to good versus evil. And the problem is, folks, that they understand, they know that we hold the power. It's incumbent upon them. The only way that they are going to have success in any of this is to keep the wool pulled over your eyes long enough for them to establish this control grid, this big
Exactly. That's why they always try to trick us into waving things and treat us like children and try to scare us. And Alfred Adask is great. Now you have your show. A lot of people listen to it, Orion Talk Radio. I know that, you usually, well, I guess you do use your name. How are you able to do this working with a high-level security clearance? Has it gotten to that point where you're, obviously you're covering stuff that's public, but I know that a lot of people in government are awake. How many people are awake inside the system you work in?
Well, I would say probably about half. And one of the reasons why I went civil service, folks, is simply this: because you can't affect change unless you get your hands dirty, get in there and change it. It's simple as that. You want to reduce spending within the federal government? Well, get a government job, get in there and change it. And that was my mentality when I got into it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get in there and I'm going to change things. I'm going to change the way people think. I'm going to make it so that the typical deadwood federal employee that sits there all day, twiddles their thumbs and collects a paycheck, I'm going to make them work. And so that's been my mentality since day one, is to get in there to make change. Because at the end of the day, as a public servant, I am the vanguard. I'm just one of many, but I'm the vanguard of the taxpayers' money. One thing that you'll hear in federal government all the time, if you ever get in there, is that it ain't my money. Oh, really? It's not your money? So you have to change the thought patterns. And by doing that, people start to see, hey, well, wait a minute, this isn't right. And that
but I think that's, Bloomberg couldn't understand why federal employees are Ron Paul supporters, because they're awake. They get it. They understand if we keep doing this, there's no future, period.
Exactly right. Resources are finite, and you can't keep this level of spending up infinitely. Unless you get somebody with the cojones to take an eraser to the ledger and just say, you know what, this is all fiat anyway, it doesn't count, let's just start all over. But I don't think you're going to see that. So you have to do things a responsible way and rein in spending, which is why
you got to do it. But again, the bankers, the finance oligarchs have this idea: bankrupt everybody and we'll get control. But then they fried everything, but they don't care as long as they're in control. In closing, after this interview's over, other points that you wish you would have made. Let's make them. And let's go back into how big this is, that they're openly building the force structure for COG around a blue-red system where trusted government, trusted contractor, military running it, military running the emergency camps that they'll sell as for helping the public. Things collapsed. They're not going to just come grab dissidents day one. It's going to be, well, the camps help people. The Army stopped the crime in New Orleans and Chicago. All being announced. Oh, the Army's coming. Big Army, little Army. All of this is going on, and there they are selling this program. I mean, this is a big deal now. The FEMA camps connected to the military, connected to FEMA, being activated, and a blue versus red force setup, which is the same thing they've used in countries that our government occupies.
Exactly right. And one thing people need to understand is that there are people within the government, both military and civilian, that in that time would not turn a weapon on their own people and would not go and enforce it. But I will say this, there is a precedent. 2005, we had Katrina, and what happened down there? I truly believe that in a way that was a dry run of things to come.
No, now they're announcing this is a model for America today on CNN. This is a model. We're going to put troops everywhere. The people want troops. They loved it in New Orleans.
And if you look at the polls and see how Ron Paul is surging, do the people really want troops on the street?
No, of course they don't. It's like saying you want a hole in the head.
So you have a tremendous propaganda campaign underway against our own people, and that needs to change. So that's why I can't encourage people enough to get your information from alternative media sources like Infowars, like Orion Talk Radio, all of that kind of stuff, so that you are aware of what is really going on.
Well, obviously, that's a good point, but I mean, now it's all manifesting. The internet censorship, the calls for arrest of citizens, it's here. There's no more time to live in denial. People shouldn't see this information and take it for granted. It's now time for banner hangs on highways. It's now time to call and talk radio. It's time to go visit your mayor, your police chief. I mean, let me tell you, 4 years ago, the awesome police chief would laugh at me in person. Now, behind the scenes, he gets me by the arm and says, well, I can't even say what he said. But I mean, you know, let me tell you, they're being told stuff that's really waking them up now.
Yeah. And well, that's the thing, is that there's no veil of secrecy anymore.
No, this is slitting America's throat. You got to decide what side you're on. You're with these foreign banks that think they're going to march the military and police out against the people, or you're with America. There's no more time to play games.
Don't be hot or cold, you know. It will make the decision. Be hot or cold, but don't be lukewarm. You know, don't sit on the fence. And that's the thing. And I truly believe that thought process in the United States is there simply because people still have too much to lose. When they look at it at the end of the day, they say, man, I really disagree with what's going on.
But you're going to lose everything. That's the trick. They're going to lose everything if you don't stand against them.
Absolutely. But they still, at the end of the day, think, well, you know, maybe if we wait it out, things will go back to the way they are. Well, guess what, folks? It's not going back to the way it was. It's simple as that. The days of the white picket fence and the nice house and everything like that, it's over. So now it's time to take our country back and save the republic. And the only way that that happens is if everybody collectively, regardless of race, of income, of all that, take all the divisive tactics, the left, the right paradigm, all that false, divisive tactics that they employ against you, see through it, band together, and let's beat this thing.
I agree with you. Let's go back to the DOD in closing. What is it like? Because that's about the number I've gotten from every expert and what I've seen. About half are awake in some degree. The other half tend to get more clingy and are like arrest everyone, and it's wonderful. And, well, I'm not bad, so let them arrest other citizens. The others are like good Nazis, good commies. They'll do whatever they're told. Or can we wake them up? I mean, what is it like to have half the DOD awake and the other half just ready to do whatever they're told, ship grandma off to a FEMA camp if she doesn't suck Obama's boots?
Well, I would say that that's a little too general. Let's just say half are awake. They know what's going on. They're just kind of afraid. 25% just don't care. They're just like, hey, man, you know, NFL's on Sunday. Woohoo! woo, all right. Then the other 25% are gung-ho, anti-Muslim, 9/11, that's the way it was. That's the way, the government commission.
Well, yeah, no, they'll say, we're taking an old lady's house. She's a Baptist, but Al-Qaeda. And they just, yeah, exactly. You tell them Al-Qaeda, you're like, but Al-Qaeda was given control of Libya. I don't want to hear that. Exactly. It's like a religion.
Right, exactly right. So, I would say probably about a quarter of it is people that are just gung-ho to the core. They believe everything that they said. They're the good soldier. Don't ask questions.
It's like an attack dog that'll run into whatever you tell it to do.
Exactly right. But all of that spawns from a lack of knowledge. And so one thing that I like to do is I just start off with simple things, and I show how things are just so backwards.
Okay, let's stop right there. Let's say you're sitting there around the coffee machine. You got a 10-minute break, and I'm sitting there going, I hope we arrest every Muslim and kill them, nuke every country over there. Who cares if we get rid of the Bill of Rights, as long as we rat them Muslers out? What do you say to me?
Well, I call you an ignorant buffoon. That's what I call you first. But what I would say is look at all these people that work with us, because it's a very diverse workforce within the government. Is that person over there, you think he's out to get you? Is he that wolf in sheep's clothing? Do you think? Because we can go back to McCarthyism if you want. Well, then you have to explain McCarthyism, because they don't know what McCarthyism is. But that's the type of thing. And then you start pointing out, well, why are we spending this much for this? Why are we doing this for that? And you start breaking down how wasteful government is. And then you start going as to why is it wasteful? What are we doing? What are we getting involved in? And when you start going down into the policy of what we're doing, what we're getting involved in, what we're sticking our nose in, they're like, holy moly, you're right. Like, why in the hell did we invade Libya? Why? And then you start to tell them why, and there you go. The light bulb.
What do they say when you bring up the fact that Al-Qaeda was created by our own government?
Yeah, I get a lot of backlash for it. But that's the thing. And then
what did they think about Fox News and Anwar al-Awlaki, number 3 in Al-Qaeda, hanging out secretly with the Secretary of the Army?
Well, and I asked that question. You tell me why that happens, and if you can give me a legitimate answer, I would be glad. I'll take it. Sure. I'd
love to hear a legitimate reason.
Me too, but I've yet to find one, because they can't. They just
listen, Joe. I wish every day it was just some Muslim terrorist, because I'm not scared of that. It's super creepy knowing that the people that run our government think they can just take $1 billion+ out of private accounts and keep it, and go on TV and say they're, because the media calls me and they go, you just want to say it's the government because you're so scared that it could be Muslims. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, it's 1,000 times scarier that our government is run by a bunch of psychos.
Yeah, and how do you expect psychos to police themselves? They're not going to police themselves. All these ethics committees and everything else.
Run by them.
It's all BS. It's all bunk. The only way that they get policed is if we police them. The only way the Constitution has any teeth is if we give it teeth. If we don't give it teeth, the Constitution is valuable.
Right. We have to animate it. It's the animating contest of liberty. Okay, in 60 seconds, Joe, we got to have you back up. Really appreciate you sending us so many things that are public. It's like, wow. And then we put it out, and if we put out some moderately big piece of news, it's like in hundreds of newspapers, but anything really bombshell, like here's the FEMA camps, it's proven, government websites, here's the contracting, military says the American people are, the red enemy, and then it'll get no attention, but at least in the real alternative media for now, it'll get attention. But 60 seconds, any closing comments about these documents and what this means?
Well, it's simply this. Now is the time to make a stand, to draw the line in the sand. You're seeing it for yourself, folks. You got the documents here. Everything is .gov, right from the horse's mouth. It's time to use these documents to your advantage. Read them as dry as a bone, but read them anyway and educate yourself. Look up the acronyms. Look up what this stuff means. It's all public information. Nothing is secret. This is not secret stuff. It's public on the street. And it's all available if you take the time and do the research. So a little less Dancing with the Stars, a little more going into this and reading about what our government is doing. And, thomasloc.gov, go to the Library of Congress, look up what these bills say. and start holding our elected officials responsible for their actions.
Well, you're right. I mean, I remember 12 years ago learning that U.S. Code Title 50, Chapter 32, subsection 1528, paragraph B, they later changed it because they got public attention, but the old versions are there, said that as long as it was research, they could kill people with chemical, biological, radiological testing. Now, we know they did all that, but the fact that they had a law to do it, it's like, whoa, the level of evil. And I remember hearing a talk show host talk about that like 12, 13 years ago and stopping my car and writing it down and looking it up on the government site and going, they can kill me for no reason? Right. I mean, it just shows how the naivete of the public and the laziness and the complexity of things has brought this in on us. But the pendulum's swinging back the other way. Joe, amazing interview. I'm going to end the show, and I look forward to having you and your wife as official guests back on the official big radio show. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime, Alex, anytime.
Wow. Well, you talk about pointing out the emperor's new clothes. You talk about the little 3-year-old, pointing and saying, hey, the emperor's not wearing anything from that parable. If you don't know that parable, look it up, folks. It's incredible. I have been to the urban warfare drills. I have seen it for myself. And what I haven't seen is in this slow buildup towards tyranny, this acceleration. The globalists, the bureaucrats, they are like an anthill that's been disturbed of fire ants. They are teeming around like busy little bees right now, or little ants, getting all this ready. And in the contracts, they're not building camps and writing manuals and getting it ready. They are getting ready to activate them. They are flipping the switches on. And to see that happening is incredible. And look at what's happening in the rest of the world. New wars, new lies about WMDs, new lies for old, imploding currencies, all of this. And cops being completely brainwashed against the population. I mean, it's here. What Germany faced, what Russia faced, what so many other countries faced, we're now facing it. But our forebears foresaw this and tried to warn us. We have the Second Amendment. I don't want to go there. We have the First Amendment. Let's use it right now, because there is a war on for your mind, and this is an info war. I want to leave you with a clip of footage I shot on a VHS camera in 1999 in Oakland, California, as the Marines practiced putting Americans in a concentration camp, in this case for protesting for food during a depression. They knew what they were going to do a long time ago. God willing, I'll see you back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central on the radio, and back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Central, at Infowars Nightly News.
Attention, attention. American forces are here to help. Remain calm. We will not tolerate civil disobedience.
Well, I think terrorism is being practiced on the residents of the city of Oakland, because many of the retired teachers, retired military people have informed me that they understand what's going on, and it's not anything that relates to humanitarian training whatsoever. This is a psychological, as we in the research community say, this is a psyops. They're preparing people for what is coming, not what is being presented today.
So you're saying they're preparing people to accept it with incrementalism?
That is correct. Like the old frog example. You put the frog in the water and you just gradually continue to raise the heat on the water until the frog is cooked. And that's the way it works. The problem is that the local people in general, just will not take their heads out of the sand. I'm going to tell everyone I can, listen, we have a serious problem.
And it's called a police state.
It's called a police state.
It is December 21st, 2011 on this Wednesday night edition. I'm Alex Jones. Wow, the news tonight is frightening when you realize just how crazy our society has gotten and that this has gone from the realm of speculation to be totally confirmed today. We begin with our top story this evening, and we have a Department of Defense civil servant joining us who has a high security clearance to break down areas that they can discuss that are open source with us. Joe Joseph will be joining us to discuss this more in the interview segment coming up after the break. But here's the Infowars.com article. Military to designate U.S. citizens as enemies during collapse. You'll remember Halliburton subsidiary getting contracts to put Americans in camps and to man them. You'll remember the Department of Defense master contract we covered earlier in the week. Well, now listeners, i.e. Joe Joseph and others, have pointed out, hey, look at this in Department of Defense contracts. We can't tell you stuff that's classified, but look here. This is public. And in it, it talks about blue force, like our military has in Afghanistan or Iraq, against red force, the American people. And government wearing transponders, everywhere else, everybody else is basically cannon fodder, dead meat, the enemy. How the military is going to man the camps for continuity of government, collapse of society. And what's incredible is this is all on Department of Defense websites. This is all on the big public contracting sites, hidden in with the hundreds of thousands of other yearly contracts. And even though we've been breaking this from open source information, zero so-called mainstream media, dinosaur, prostitute media,